Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Happy. Oh, I got cords wrapped up in my chair. All right, I'll figure that out later. Happy Friday. Welcome. Oh, I forgot to pop open the chat window. There's already stuff going on. Hey, Joey. Hey, Krister. And thanks again, Krister, for sharing that with us yesterday. That was a lot of fun to look at. This is some kind of iced tea for the working man. It's Friday, so we're here to take a look at our community spotlight, see what's going on. The Red Owl Inn, welcome. See what's going on in the world of, I don't know, tabletop role playing, so to speak. Programming notes before I forget. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, I will be out. I've got a combination of work and family stuff going on that just makes it impossible for me to stream. I may throw some shorts and some other stuff, but and I'll try to remember this afternoon to put something in the community tab, but no streams for the first 3 days of next week, and there'll probably be some other outages as we get into the Christmas season. But I wanted to mention it here in case I forget. I'm in the OSR. I will go to my multi Reddit if I can remember how to get there. I think I can go. Let's see if I go to me and then I go to there. Bam, bam. There we are. We are in the RPG roundup. What do we call that? What do they call these? Multi Reddits. Gonna switch to the new tab because the hot tab gives some weird results. Let's see what we've got. A few thoughts on making a stat block, quote unquote, morale, info, and monster motivations more relevant to play. This might be good. This was posted to the RPG, the very generic RPG subreddit. Let's check it out. This is gonna take us to a blog, I think. Yeah, I'll throw this link in the chats. We are at the Handbook of Heroes, handbookofheroes.com. Krister asks, "Are you sure you want the new tab?" Yeah. So the problem, Krister, with Hot that I've discovered with a multi Reddit is you get stuff. It's what ends up happening is I'm presuming because of the way Reddit's determining. I don't. You have the different subreddits. Each have their own hot things, and then it's all gathered into this multi Reddit. But when I just end up seeing stuff that tends to be old, like I'll see something that's 4 months old, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But then I feel like sometimes I'm running into stuff I've already seen before, so I found that with the multi Reddit, just so I make sure I'm getting, um, I guess, make sure I'm getting stuff that's kind of new or at least not super old. I stick with the new tab. Right, I'll ask the best place to find generators for hex crawls and dungeons. Ooh, well, there's all kinds of things. Red Owl. I mean, the Reddit actually is a good spot if you're an OSR type. Then the OSR or NSR subreddits are good. There actually is a subreddit that's all about generators. I think it's called RPG. Let me switch back here for a second. RPG generators subreddit. Yep, right there. Underscore. I'll just open it so you can see it. All kinds of generators, and they do all kinds of great. So this is all 30 days of visual generators they do. Um, Krister asks, I said OSR and NSR. What's NSR? NSR, it's basically very similar. I think from the games that are in there, they're pretty darn similar. NSR, I think, is attempting to get away from the baggage and just some of the things around OSR. So it's less about, and I think less of a focus about necessarily being close to kind of old school D&D. Though you'll find things like uh, what's right, like Cairn, like Yochai Gal, I think was someone who was part of that kind of first wave, not first wave, it's sort of initial thing of, hey, let's kind of move away, kind of do our own thing, sort of detach ourselves from kind of the OSR a bit. So from a games standpoint, you're going to find a lot of overlap, and folks will, whether you consider a game OSR or NSR, it's really just kind of up to you. But you'll find maybe more of that emphasis, or just more emphasis maybe on things like Troika and uh, Cairn, Into the Odd, whatever you might find in NSR. But it's really more about the community kind of thinking like, whoa, we don't necessarily want to be attached to some of these other folks and things going on there. So, and just baggage of different things. So let's kind of start fresh. Start. And so basically instead of old school being kind of old school revolution or renaissance, whatever revival, then this is kind of new school renaissance revival. But there are subreddits. There's NSR subreddit, there's NSR Discord. So it's just another source. There's probably a lot. I'm guessing there's probably a lot of cross posting. I think there's a lot of folks who are probably have feet in both communities. I mean, the OSR is also, so Christopher says, oh, new games that are similar to D&D. Well, I mean, OSR is also new games that are similar to D&D. I think they want to be maybe a little bit, I think it's more to do with OSR, depending on who you talk to, might have a lot of baggage from different elements. And the NSR is kind of a way to maybe get away from that a bit, but also maybe less, maybe we were just going to take away the kind of community stuff, maybe less emphasis on being D&D like or vintage D&D like, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll try to get Yohai or someone to come on and we can talk about breaking down the NSR a bit to kind of help differentiate it. Let's go back to this article. This is called Along Came a Spider. Is this going to make sense to me? All right. So it's called Along Came a Spider. What's this? The imperturbable Miss Gestalt has a weakness, and that weakness happens to be arachnophobia. Hot damn, this is exactly the sort of interesting info nugget players can work with. Summoning giant spiders, creating illusions, wild shaping into appropriately monstrous eight-legged freaks. It's all ripe for exploitation. But how the crap are players ever supposed to discover this eminently exploitable character flaw? The easiest solution is to plant this type of insight manually. The players discover some old press clippings. They notice Miss Gestalt cringing away from the webs while spying on her. They overhear her minions talking about how much she hated the second Harry Potter movie. Of course, this puts much of the onus on GMs to cram that info into their plots. In a dungeon scenario where you're fighting random monsters, it's not going to be much help. So here's my pitch for a mechanical solution. You know how you'll often see quote unquote morale or quote unquote tactics entries in monster stat blocks? Why not introduce a way to interact with these entries? Imagine if diplomacy, medicine, or insight checks could be used like recall lore checks mid-combat. Only instead of finding out info about creature habitat and society, you could deduce something like a quote unquote morale condition for this particular creature. I bet that can make combat a bit more interesting as players might begin to push for some specific quote unquote morale victory rather than a quote unquote to the death victory. So I have to say here, I don't think it's so much that players are pushing for that than GMs kind of default in to the death. Well, let's continue. In Miss Gestalt's case, that might look something like so. Here we have a series of I don't have a way of pushing this over to the side because of the way this is. Let me see if I crunch this window. Is that going to help me a bit? There we go. Get that centered a bit more so that you're just not losing the text for my beautiful face. Critical success. You notice Miss Gestalt pluck at her own hair as it touches the nape of her neck. It's clear that she hates spiders, but she really hates spider webs. You believe Miss Gestalt will flee if covered in webbing. Success. Every time a spider demon skitters close, Miss Gestalt recoils. You think she's arachnophobic. If Miss Gestalt starts her turn adjacent to a spider demon, she gains frightened 1. This value increases by 1 for each consecutive round in which she starts her turn adjacent to a spider demon. Failure indicates that she's hard to read. Critical failure indicates that Miss Gestalt flinches noticeably whenever one of her spider demon minions is struck in combat. She seems to have developed an uncharacteristic fondness for the creatures. Maybe you could take one hostage. So basically, here we have, I guess you're rolling something like an insight check, but you're rolling this, I guess, in combat, in a combat scenario. And so you pick up these, in a sense, tells. If you do really well, then you get the kind of the key information. Obviously, if you fail, then you've misunderstood. So in this case, whereas you would notice if you really were observant that this person's arachnophobic, and additionally with the webbing, if you crit fail, you feel like she actually has some kind of positive emotional attachment to the spiders. I mean, the situation's a little bit contrived, or maybe more than a little bit, because if you're deathly afraid of spiders, why would you be employing spider demon minions? Doesn't really make a whole bunch of sense. But that's like, obviously this is just an example. So let's see what else they got here. You could use the same system to assess tactics. This mage is a summoner. Determine a breakpoint. The ogre will try to flee at 25% hit points or gain insight into motivation. It's just trying to defend its young. The trick would be to design tactically interesting information and pair it with a reasonable skill. So, what do you say we explore this biz together? If you were to adapt combat insight into your own game, how would you use it? Which skills would be appropriate, and what kind of mechanical advantages could players expect? So, here are your instructions for today's discussion. First, nominate a skill, then give us your best crit, success, failure, botch, baked breakdown for a creature of your choice. With any luck, we just might invent a new subsystem in the process. So my first thought, well, this is interesting, right? I appreciate this. I would not want to have something like the ogre will flee at 25% hit points, because how do you know what 25% hit points is? So that kind of that sort of pushes the line. Now you might say if it's really wounded, we think it'll flee if we hurt it enough. Though in that case, how is that really helping you? Because I presumably in the absence of anything else, you're going to try to hurt the thing until it flees or dies anyway. So I don't know what that insight is giving you. Hey, the ogre is going to give up or die if we kill it. Yeah, it is. That just means we just got to keep hitting it. It doesn't. That doesn't really. I think if I want this kind of whatever this insight check to work, as I want to reveal something else other than just keep beating on the thing. Um, I think in dealing with some kind of I don't know, animal handling or survival skill, you could probably use for the it's just trying to defend its young kind of thing. I think so. Here, my take on it is I kind of think this is interesting. I think certainly in kind of a fifth edition or skill based kind of D&D scenario stuff, it's kind of cool. I don't want it to be in combat. I think you get to combat, it's too late. These things are not. Everyone's hyped up. Their adrenaline's pumping. All these things are going on. You're not getting these kind of reads because remember, in your round of combat, it's like 3 6 seconds, something like that. And and I can't imagine that unless you're sitting in some safe, really safe spot that you can just, focus in on somebody for those entire 6 seconds and you're not. I mean, I imagine you're in combat, your head's on a swivel. You don't know what's coming at you from where. I'm not doing that. So, and I would actually prefer in this kind of system a reason for people not to just jump to like we attack. You see the bear, it's in a cave, its hackles are up, it's growling. Instead of the fighter going, "Well, I just rush in," and then somebody behind them going, "Oh, well, I'm going to use the insight check." No, I want you to think about that that fighter's going, "Well, I'm just going to walk in there." Someone to say, "Ho there, fighter. Let me take a look," and then pause, and then see if you can get that some moment in time before you're into combat to do this. It really this stuff I think plays into a great idea is if you want to have your party actually scouting out situations instead of just jumping in to combat as soon as it presents itself. This gives them a reason to like let's hang back, let's scout it out, and then you could see what kind of different skills and maybe you could. And if you're not using skill abilities, if you want to use classes or you just want to use some kind of common sense type of adjudication just to say, okay, you hang back and yeah, you can see behind the bear in some hay or whatever, something back there, bones or whatever. You can see a couple of young cubs that the bear is clearly putting itself between you and it. Oh, okay, great. Like you noticed that because you took time and you didn't just jump in and see it after it's too late. So my first thing would be I want this stuff to be outside combat. And I think particularly for even for fifth edition, we don't need more stuff that's triggered in combat. Give people a reason to hold off on the combat or at least be more sensible or really get in the mindset of planning their combat. Hey, you don't just have to fight everything for moves. I'm not going to reward you for jumping in and then giving you because at a certain point you have five guys in your party and everyone's ahead of you. It's very easy to have someone spend a turn doing one of these insight checks and then get all these kind of advantages for it. Like I want you to do it outside combat. And then yeah, and the second part is I don't want it to be revealing kind of meta information. 25% hit points doesn't mean anything. Maybe you say it's very wounded. It might do X, Y, or Z. I guess that's okay. In terms of the phobias and things like that for intelligent creatures, I almost feel like that's more of a downtime. You're going to look at, I mean, I've got things I'm afraid of. You're not going to, here's the thing, right? In any given 5 minutes of time or however long you're going to go, if you were to look at me, I mean, you could, here I am on screen. I'll be on screen in this stream for an hour. You're probably not going to pick up on some phobia I have because even if I was deathly afraid of cockroaches, chances are cockroaches are going to walk by in that moment. However, if you're in a situation which you have downtime, you could easily do kind of a stakeout routine. Hey, we're going to spend this week of downtime following trailing this person, and then I would say, okay, over a week, you might just find those moments that you want to find, which is another interesting tactic. It gives you a reason to invest in long periods of time that might get you some valuable information. But to me, doing it in 10 seconds or a minute, um, I don't know, doesn't really rub me the right way. Let's see. Michael Fraker says, "Would be bad if the GM just described what she does without a role." I don't think it would be bad. I think here, they always a lot. There's a lot of ideas and a lot of things with fifth edition, and these things are all about activating your skills. So they want to tie it to that skill roll, which I get because classes are differentiated by their skills. So you want to give something to the ranger, give something to the druid, give something to the sorcerer, give something to this other party. So if you're giving it away for free, yeah, that's great. But I think part of what they want to do is they want to essentially at least give the potential to highlight different classes, which it's fine. It's not necessarily what I would do because I mean I'm playing in if I was going to use something against in my home game, I don't have any skills, so this wouldn't in terms of finding a skill matchup, it's no good. I would be using the kind of context of what the players tell me something, but I think where I would want to position this would be maybe two things. One would be some minute or so of immediate scouting leading up to some kind of encounter, and then longer term, whatever you want to call that, scouting, shadowing, following kind of situation, which might give you some information, maybe depending on the creature. I think with animals, I'm sure someone who is experienced with animals can kind of look and kind of get you a pretty good idea. If you have a ranger, they could probably look at that situation and say, that's the bear, it's in a cave. Chances are there comes back there because it's a spring. All right, that's what's happening there. We should leave that thing the heck alone. And then for intelligent creatures, say, hey, make this a week's worth of downtime, and when you're coming up with downtime activities, one of which is to kind of trail somebody, and then you can make some rolls to see whether the person spots you, whether you find something interesting, all those things. So that's kind of how I'd probably break that out if I was going to use this. Joey says that maybe if enemies are run on AI, this would be more useful. Like if a dragon breathes every third round and flies right before it breathes, so now you can maneuver your troops prior to the breath. Um, yeah, I mean that's fine. I mean, I don't love. I mean, just personally, when I'm playing a tabletop game with a human, I'm not looking for a really programmed AI for creatures because that's, I mean, as a GM, that doesn't interest me, and as a player, I feel like that feels too video gamey. But if you're playing something like Gloomhaven or something kind of game like a board game like that, I mean, yeah, sure, that stuff would make sense. The dragon always flies around, does this thing before it breathes. So either we know that, oh, it takes the flight, it's going to come breathe, or maybe even to the point of, oh, if we stop it from flying, maybe it can't get in a position to breathe, something like that. For playing kind of a tabletop game, I'm not in love with those kinds of really, I don't know, I feel like rigid um steps. But it's an interesting idea. All right, so that was Along Came a Spider. Did I give this enough votes? I think I said I think it's a good idea. Yep, I did. I think it could use. It's going to be very dependent on what kind of game you like to play. But certainly for some games, it's going to work. Going to work better than for others. All right. How do you handle a party post funnel when most of the survivors reach 10 XP? A one player squad stayed in the back the whole time, whole adventure, and earned 0 XP. I'm not sure. So that's for DCC. I'll give it enough vote. I don't know how I would handle that. I find that hard to believe that someone's whole squad could stay in the back and not earn any XP at all. I don't know. Looking for creative ideas to deliver the bad news, and my players made the worst possible decision they could have entire in the entire campaign. Oh, that's pretty funny. Uh, how do I break it to them, or just to creatively deliver it? I don't know. I mean, you could just tell them. I mean, I guess it depends what the decision is. I imagine it's got to be pretty drastic if it's literally the worst decision they could possibly have made. I'm guessing the consequences will be pretty clear pretty quickly. Let's see. We have other things. We have. I'm looming. I think they mean I'm looking. Low to mid fantasy jungle adventures. Do I know any? Not really, actually. On the very outer edges of OSR, but I notice there aren't many AD&D 2E player option character sheets, so they made one. I'll upvote it, but I don't need to look at it. Oh, this might be fun. This is back in OSR, defending Hamlet from the Moat House. Hey, Direct Sun. Welcome, welcome. So this subreddit, I'll pop it in here. This subreddit, I have my own multi-Reddit direct son that's got, and it's public, so you can check it out. I will post it here. I have it posted in the show notes. If you're curious, if you want to follow along from home, this should pop up in the chat momentarily. I have a bunch of subreddits in here, but you go to reddit.com/user// hexpressman /m/RPG roundup /new. That's where we are at. It's got a bunch of subreddits in here. I just felt like I wanted to just I think there's a lot of good content that comes outside of just the OSR subreddit, so I wanted to expand things a bit. I'm definitely tweaking the multi-Reddit now and again. So if you follow it, you might find the contents or the Reddits that are the subreddits that are included might change. Subreddits subject to change. All right, so this one was submitted by I didn't I didn't post the other author, so my bad. This one was posted by Shabatirona, defending Hamlet from the moat house. My players managed to poison themselves in the first floor of the moat house and return to Hamlet for healing. Naturally, the denizens of the moat house followed them. Has anyone run a defense of Hamlet? Thinking of running several scenes. The ogre is toppling buildings. The gnolls are carrying off children from the outskirts of the village. The bugbears have snuck into town and are laying an ambush. Their kids trapped in a burning building. And Lareth raises zombies from the graveyard / recently slain. Anyone done anything similar? Well, first let me give an upvote. I think the questions you have to ask yourself in this situation, in terms of, I really like the idea that hey, the players got themselves in some trouble and exposed themselves, and the monsters took note. They're there. They see something. Now you have to ask yourself. I guess I'm repeating myself, but you have to ask yourself. Well, the monsters have been there for some period of time before the party showed up. So if they're in the moat house, I don't think, if I'm remembering correctly, there's nothing stopping these monsters from spilling out into Hamlet at any time they wanted to. So what's changed? Okay, so the party came in, they knocked open the door, got poisoned, and then skulked away. I mean, that did that. Maybe that ticked off the monsters. But you really want to think about, well, what is their goals? Now, Hamlet's an interesting situation because it's supposed to be attached to the, um, was it the elemental evil modules, which didn't come out at the time, and it was kind of for a while, it was just this sort of hanging chad of an adventure intro to a longer campaign that showed up much later. Um, so if you're just running off of Hamlet, then you just kind of have this. Well, they're kind of there. Like, are they waiting for something? Are they waiting for someone? It's up to you to sort of think about if you're not gonna, if you're especially if you're not going to chain it up to the elemental evil campaign, temple of elemental campaign, I should say. What are they doing? And then if the party did something and that kind of woke them up with some out of stupor and suddenly they're rampaging through the town, great. But I might ask, like, well, why now? What other than the fact that they were disturbed by the party, what is it? What's going on? Joey says it's now a Seven Samurai story. Yeah. So the thing of the Seven Samurai is they had a chance they had a chance to prepare. I mean, that might be the next thing, right? Run it like Seven Samurai. Hey, the monsters come out of the moat house and they're like, hey, you know what, Hamlet? Like, we've had enough of your guff. You got 2 weeks to deliver unto us loot, food, whatever, or we are going to come back and burn the place down. And so that would give the party then a week or 2 weeks, however much time, to try to figure out to pull some kind of Seven Samurai, Magnificent Seven kind of fun and games out of their hats to deal with the threat. In this case, the threat is just basically followed them directly out of the dungeon, followed them back to town. Um, it seems fun, but think about the whys, right? Because they've been there. Or maybe you want to, or maybe what you need to do is, if you've already started down this path and the monsters have come out of the moat house, then I'd like to backtrack it and think about, well, why didn't they do this before? Because that could be a solution for the party. Maybe there's some artifact that used to be there that they disturbed it, and then if they put it back, it's going to pull the monsters back in. I'm not sure what it would be because these are not all like undead or supernatural or something. So, might be some interesting stuff. But I'd want to figure that out. In any case, monsters are on the move. Bodhisattva Rising replied that Hamlet has some pretty tough NPCs who would certainly get involved in the defense too. What was the druid's name? That dude and his snake staff would be calling woodland beings to battle. In fact, the more I think about it, there is a good reason Hamlet has not been attacked. It might be suicide for the moat house denizens. And then Shabatirona says, assume they're all dead or missing. And then Samantha G says, that could be interesting. Maybe they're off dealing with something else and the Moat House gang attempt to seize the opportunity. And then Samantha G also says, also the gay couple that live in the tower, Rufus and Vern, and their crew of reformed bad boy Leathermen are together, are tougher than the Moat House gang. And then Art Manley 7224 says, LOL, what timing? I just started this with my players, and while they killed the spider, they were wounded badly by the fight with the guards. They ended up making a deal and paying off the remaining guards to leave. But after decided to head back to Hamlet. I've been deciding if I wanted this exact thing to happen. It would make an interesting twist on this adventure. And then also Samantha G says, when they were a kid, before their friends and family really understood the game, this is one of the first modules we got. None of us, including whoever was taking a turn at GM, had any concept of how a village would respond to attack. So we ran it like we did all dungeons as a monster zoo and just went house to house killing villagers. Yeah, it was nonsense. Oh, I like that. They treated it like a dungeon, just killed everything. I mean, I really like the idea of the monsters reacting. Like that's the kind of stuff that we talk about all the time. Hey, consequences. You went in there, you opened the door in this moat house, and you did some stuff, and now stuff is coming. You just want to think through kind of what the response is and why, and not just in terms of quote unquote logic, but all those whys and stuff are all opportunities for the party and you as the GM to build off of. If they come out because of some MacGuffin A, then that MacGuffin A becomes something the party can try to take back, destroy, retrieve. If it's because of some NPC out there sent them a message, then the NPC is someone that the party might want to deal with, bribe, defeat, whatever. So all these things you're coming up for the reasons. It's not just to make your backstory make sense, or at the end of the day, where you can, as a story, and you tell the story to somebody, your players, they go, okay, that makes sense. I mean, it is, I think it's good to have things make sense because when things make sense, it allows your party to really get into it and start to think it through because they can use the kind of real world or quote unquote real world logic to make sense of things and therefore make decisions because the more you can intuit what things happen, the better decisions you can make, but also because all these things, these questions you answer will just present opportunities for your players. If because in this situation it is fun, these monsters just come out and start terrorizing the town, but in this scenario, there's only one solution, which is just kill all the monsters, which is fine. Kill them all or drive them back. But after that, all you've done is you've just okay, so you've half destroyed. So they went in the moat house, they didn't do much. They came out, the monsters came out, they drove the monsters back. At the end of the day, it just becomes like, okay, they did this thing, but want to think about, well, what's the next steps? What is if we were to then take this scenario and then push it further, like what happens next? They end up at just kind of this essentially you're back at almost the same thing. It doesn't really make much of a difference. I know people have died potentially, whatever, but otherwise you're kind of the same. Whereas if you maybe come up with some reasons why and what they're looking for and why they didn't do this before and everything, you're opening up you see these kind of like tendrils of potential plot lines or reaching out, and then you can grab onto them or your party can and follow them and then kind of create more scenarios. I'm not sure if that makes sense. Does that make sense? You can let me know. That's my thought. But that's hilarious. And I love the idea of that these kids, and I think that is a thing that we have to remember. If you're someone who's been around for a while, a lot of folks playing 5th edition, playing it for the first time, and if you remember as a kid all the goofy, stupid things you did, just going in and slaughtering everybody in Hamlet just because, I think sometimes we don't give enough leeway to folks because even though you're adults, I think there's that impulse, especially the first couple of times you play, to just let loose and just do all kinds of silly, kind of stupid stuff. We all had those moments. I had them when I was, 10, 12, 13, and whatever. Um, and folks are having them now. Joey says, I guess at that point it doesn't matter if you kill the monsters in the dungeon or the village, the end result is the same. Yeah, and I think that's what we can kind of like try to think about. Can we take it up a notch? How can we take this kind of thing and say, okay, now the monsters have moved off the moat house and think about what's behind them? Oh, so what drove them out of the moat house? Was it just the party opening up that door? Could it be that simple? Was the door magic? What was holding it? Is there something that connection between the monsters and this physical building of the moat house? If that's the case, that's cool because then the party could try to figure that out. Well, we can't stop the monsters, but maybe we can do something to put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak, or is somebody controlling them from afar, and some letter got delivered, and it was just coincidence that the party came in and opened the doors up right as the monsters were getting ready to come out, whatever. And then you can follow that plot line, whether it leads to temples of elemental evil or it leads to something else, or whatever it is. Are the monsters looking for something? Was there somebody in the town that was important? And now the party's here, so the monsters figure that person must be here. So then they're up to try to flush out that person as best they can, right? You just want to just think about those kind of angles because it just opens up places for your adventure to go. Okay. What do we got here? VATs is a mechanic. Miratiros, the city of water and rice. What anime worlds would be interesting for a tabletop RPG campaign? I don't know anything. I know very little about anime worlds. I am repetitive. Am I repetitive? This might be good. Yeah, we'll open a new tab. I'll give it an upvote here, though. So I don't forget. This was posted to the DM Academy subreddit by Kuroboy Akalemi. Apologies if I butchered that. Hi, I am a DM for a long time. Usually I don't like meaningless combat. When I write encounters, I try to write them as problems. Solution depends on players. They can talk, they can fight, ... I run a game for new players and they just realize this game is much more easier if they try to talk. When they see something, they first talk and try to learn situation. They are still combat. This is what this was actually what I like, but I don't know if this makes my games repetitive. They are new players. They say they're having fun, but I want to improve myself, and I'm not sure if this is something good or bad. Well, first of all, if your players say they're having fun, and look, players are going to say it's hard to get the truth out of your players, but you should not assume if they say they're having fun that they're not having fun. Assume they're having fun. You'll start to pick up on it if it seems like in the sessions it's not fun for them, but they're telling you afterwards, like, "Oh yeah, it's great." Like you'll start to get a sense of maybe it's not fun. But if they're telling you it's fun, they're just starting out. Everyone seems to be having fun. But it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck. It's probably a duck. They seem like they're having fun during the game session, and they tell you afterwards they're having fun. They're probably having fun. I know that's hard. A lot of GMs, I think we are too hard on ourselves. We want to look for the clouds on the other sides of the silver linings. We want to find the dark clouds. So that's probably the first thing. So just know that, or just accept that, hear that your players are probably having fun, which means you're doing a good job. I would never say it is bad to give possibilities to talk and to negotiate and play around. I think the only thing that might be boring is if the same tack has the same results every time. If you can always take one approach with creatures and it always works and pretty much always the same way, that's going to get boring. It's just going to feel like everybody's the same. You just want to make sure that people have different motivations, different things that they want, that not everybody, you can't bribe everybody, you can't threaten everybody. Sometimes you're not going to be able to talk your way out of it. There are some guards that are standing in front of the door to the Lord's inner sanctum, and these are the most loyal of the loyal guards. These are the house Carls, the house knights, and they're standing there. Probably not going to be able to bribe them unless you can really bribe them with something amazing. Chances are you're not going to be able to bribe them. Chances are you're probably not going to be able to threaten them. They're formidable soldiers and combatants. They're probably not going to bow to that either, and they're probably not just going to let you in. You may be able to talk to them, and they may not attack you straight away, but they're probably not letting you in, and that's fine. Barring magic, barring something special, you can't always necessarily talk your way through. But I don't think that they have to attack at first sight. They can ask, why are you here? You're not supposed to be here. Shove off. And the party can be like, okay, well, Lady Jessica told us to be here. And they're like, well, she would have given you a sign, show us some token of Lady Jessica's. The party goes, I think we left it in the other room. And then they shove off or whatever. So I think that's the only thing in terms of that. I always feel like, a lot of times one of the things that can be improved for GMs is to get out of that habit of just, you see a creature so far away, roll initiative. Or at least if you're going to roll initiative, make sure the party knows that this doesn't mean that combat is on. It means that timing is important. And I that's something I'll reiterate to my players. I'm having you roll initiative because timing is important, not because we're necessarily going to fight, but If you win initiative and you decide to attack, that affects that even though the person after you wanted to talk peacefully, well, you jumped in there and ran up and attacked them, and that's the way it is. So I want to be an initiative to make sure that order is important. And then that they have their order comes up also, and that you can have that kind of response. But that's about it. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong. And why did you get downvoted? My gosh, who would be downvoting it? This is the problem with the internet, social media. People just downvoting stuff just to downvote. All right, let's go to the next page. We are moving right along. Oh, and folks, if you're in the chat and you see something that looks interesting and I have skipped over it for whatever reason, please shout it out. I'm happy to go check it out. Let's see what else we have here. Resources for world builders. This might be cool. Useful. I hope this is not a question, but a thing. Oh, it's a YouTube video. Okay. Well, this seems like it's pretty cool, but it's a video. So can't check it out, but apparently there's a map of the earth and weather patterns from January through December 2019. And I guess the YouTube video is about 20 minutes and you can learn about ocean currents and all kinds of stuff. The thing is about the world building stuff, it's cool, but you don't need it. And what I mean is that your players are at ground level. They don't care. Like as long as things seem to make sense, seasons, assuming your seasons are basically Earth-like. If things tend to be kind of Earth-like, the exact details are just not important. Ocean currents are not really important to your players. They're not going to know it. Even if you're playing a seagoing campaign and you're just like the current goes this way, great, fine, we follow the current. Like it, knowing all the underlying data about these currents and everything, it's fine if that's what you want. If you enjoy that as world building, I'm not going to stop you. But understand that that's more for you, much more for you than anybody else. Because goodness knows, if I'm a player, I'm interested in, okay, I'm in the boat and we need to go from here, A to B. And okay, the currents and the winds will help. Great. You can go faster because you're in this current. Okay, great. Let's go. That's all I care about. I don't need to be like, oh, well, if this is a cold welling water, then it should be doing this. And oh, because of these wind patterns and whatever. And I'm in this sector of like, no one cares. I mean, unless you're assuming you're not playing with professional meteorologists and other weather people, nobody cares. What else have we got here? Fantasy Space Ruins, a random table. We can take a look at this. I'm always down for some random tables. This was posted to the aforementioned RPG generators. So this is a D10 table for a space fantasy ruins. So we've got curious space fish swarm around a hulk formed of ship carcasses. A troll smith picks through the junk, assembling a masterpiece. What is a ship carcass? Are we assuming like living ships? Like Moya from was that Firefly? Not Firefly. It was oh, what was that show with Crichton and the blah, 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 blah. It wasn't Firefly. Firefly was the yeah, I don't now I'm spacing out on the name of the show. Anyway, it was a cool show. It was back on back in the day on Sci-Fi Channel. I don't know why I'm spacing out on the name. Claudia Black and a bunch of people were in it, and a Muppet, kind of nice Muppet. It was fun. Incision of Larb, a wall of wreckage surrounds a rotating bronze ring. Ghostly images appear within, and scared voices can be heard calling. That one's creepy. You could put that anywhere. A chaotic tavern of scoundrels rests among a sprawling confusion of metal and glass. It has good views of a famed rippling space anomaly. Mutated beasts with arcane marks roam an old reinforced laboratory. It is said a certain combination of clockwork doors opens a pocket dimension with a workshop for more dangerous research. Cool. And then I'll just read one more. The Annihilation Lens. Crystal telescope shows places it cannot see. Glowing dust swirls around, forming into pointing humanoid figures. Slurring Scott got me. Farscape. Yep. Michael Frager. Flex was a good choice. Flex actually was used to, if I'm remembering correctly, Flex came on before Farscape. Like it was a little bit of an older show, but literally, I think in the lineup, it would go Flex and then Farscape would come on. But yeah, it was Farscape. Thank you. Yep. Slurring Scott and Joey, you guys win the prize, which is no prize at all, other than just correcting me. Or, but yeah, Farscape. I could never get into Flex. I don't know what it was. It just didn't. I would just wait until Farscape came on. I liked Farscape a lot. I kind of wish that Farscape got more of the treatment that Stargate got. And I didn't have anything against Stargate, the show, TV show. I mean, the movie was pretty good, but I liked the show. But Stargate got like Stargate Atlantis, and this they let Stargate go a long time. Maybe it was just more popular than Farscape ultimately. I'm not sure, but I kind of wish that Farscape had got more chances. What stat to use for damage reduction when jumping from into water from high altitude? Yeah, why do you need damage reduction? I hate to tell you this, DM Academy, but water, the higher up, the farther up you are, when you hit water, the harder it gets. I think it's the only material that does this, behaves this way. The farther away you are from water, or like the higher up you drop into water, the harder it gets. So like from by the time you get to say a bridge or your average bridge jumping, it's basically concrete. Um, so you don't need. There's no. I wouldn't even do damage reduction. I would just take the falling damage. Take the falling damage. Maybe if you're underneath a certain footage, you might subtract a little bit. But if the height is any great height at all, you might as well just do your straight falling damage. The water's not helping you. Let's see. What potential powers could someone have that has total control over the first and second dimensions? Oh boy, I don't know about that. Let's see. Well, this one we'll check it out. An indie RPG publisher. Why are these getting downvoted? Releasing this very pretty hex. Is this the one that's in Kickstarter that we already looked at? Okay, we looked at that before. Don't need to look at it again. But you can go to Warhammer, Wargamer, not Warhammer, wargamer.com and read that if you want. Any thoughts on this dangerous opposition group? I don't care. Mechanics, cheat sheet. How do you make good character do evil things? And I don't mean when you make them, they need to have. There's got to be some angle. Police crack down on GMs burning out after games. That's funny. Hey, Frederick, welcome. I guess you can't stay, but thanks for dropping in and saying hi. Well, this might be interesting. And the Hill Cantons are back. I didn't know they'd gone anywhere, but they're back apparently. We'll check that out. This is posted by Maxil_Za. Hi, fellow DMs. I recently started a new campaign. 1 fresh player, 5 veteran players. The new guy has very poor gaming instincts. Looting during combat, looking up monster stats and abilities during combat, splitting the party, trying to meet with high lords, being very low level and almost no renown. My go-to move when I see some looking at monster stats is to upgrade the monster on the spot, but that feels like punishing the whole group. Any advice would be appreciated. Pal, you got to talk to the player. Okay, that's number one. New player, they don't necessarily know. It's just bad form all around the stuff that they're doing for various reasons. But looking at monster stats, just tell them, hey, man, bad form. Okay. And if you do it, if I see you doing it and take advantage of it, like it's just going to be like, I'm going to give you like 3 strikes. I'm not going to, I think I would just say, like, listen, we're going to go on a 3-strike process. I've talked to you about it now. So, don't do it. I'm going to know if you try to do it because, if you see this ooze that you have no idea what it is, and you're a new player, so I know you don't have any what idea it is, and then magically you start going, oh, we got to throw acid or fire or lightning at it. I'm going to know. And when you do that, I'm just going to give you 3 strikes. And at the end of the third strike, I'm going to say, well, this isn't the game for you. So, if you want to play right. Looting during combat is just a bad call. I would also probably talk to the player. I would also probably hope that other players would talk to that player because it's not cool, and you're certainly bringing down your combat efficiency if you've got 3 folks attacking and then all of a sudden it's 2 folks because that one person's turned around to try to scramble stuff. Also, you could have monsters take advantage of it. That's something that is in fiction enough that they were fighting a bunch of whatever, and then this guy decides to crouch down and start looting something that a creature could potentially go after the easy target. I would like, I'm always about talking to the players, but that one being an actual thing happening in the fiction, if the circumstances are right, I would totally have a monster go after them because it just makes sense. You've basically you've potentially turned, somehow exposed yourself. You're certainly not defensively positioned if you're everything. You don't have your weapons are not out. And I would even make sure they're saying like, oh, I start looting the corpse. I say, okay, you're going to put your shield, your sword, whatever down. You got to have both hands out. You're going to be looting, and you're going to be kind of crouched down, and you're going to loot, and that's going to give advantage and everything, and certainly put them at a disadvantage when something decides to just jump on them all of a sudden. So That I might do. Splitting up the party, that's gonna sometimes splitting up the party is totally reasonable, and sometimes it's not. You could talk to them and say, "Hey, look, just as a piece of FYI, if you split up the party, I don't change the encounters due to the amount of party members. So if there are 8 gnolls in that room, you go in by yourself, guess what? There's still 8 gnolls in that room. Whereas if all 3 of you go in, then there's still 8 gnolls in that room. After that, there might actually be good reasons for splitting the party to be more efficient time-wise or whatever. I guess I'm saying the consequences are going to be there for itself. If you split the party and you go somewhere super dangerous and you get ganked because you're all alone, kind of thing, then there's your consequence right there. Or if the other party, you were doing something goofy and the other party moved the other direction and got ganked, that's kind of going to take care of itself a little bit. Though I might just, because it's a new player, I might just say, hey, just so you know, I'm not saying don't split the party, but I'm saying just recognize what happens when you do split the party. And then trying to meet with high lords being very low level and almost no renown. I think, again, you can role play that out and it pays for itself. And there are consequences too. If you try to bust into the lord's chambers and you're not supposed to be there, you get in trouble. You can be sent on quests. You can be punished. You can be fined, kicked out of town. All that stuff you can take care of itself. But I would definitely, first thing, talk to the player. Joey says they might think it's like Diablo or something. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Yeah, coming from video games, depending on what your fictional thing is, depending on how you envision your character, yeah, you may totally think, oh, this is like Diablo or this is like whatever. I can just talk to anybody or do anything, and it's like, well, you can, but know what's going to happen if you do. And then Brian Smith says that yeah, the temptation to do extra work to make the monsters not by the book is a trap. Just definitely talk to the player. Yeah, yep, and you are kind of punishing the other party. If they're about, if I'm about ready to, I've seen this ooze before, and I'm about ready to get my cast lightning bolt or whatever my electricity type spell, and then you've changed it because the other guy's looking at the book. Like I'm going to be mad. Now, granted, I should be mad at that player, but I'm going to be, I'm going to be annoyed. Not a huge deal, but you're better off just. I mean, all these issues, you almost always want to. And I did a video on this ages ago, which was the gist is you can't solve player issues with in-game stuff. You got to talk to the player. Talk to them, talk to them. All right, let's check this out. Hill Cantons are back. I didn't know they'd gone anywhere. Well, let's see what's going on. Okay, so this is, oh, well, they're just, all right. Well, I guess I thought maybe there was going to be some kind of announcement of sorts, but I guess there isn't an announcement. When was this last? Whoa. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I guess he really is back. So I guess if you enjoyed the Hill Cantons blog, and there was lots of good stuff in here, it had been 2 years, really 3 years since they posted. So before these couple blog posts here in 2020, they had one post in 2022. So this year they had only had one post in the whole year of 2020, 2 years ago. And then before that was 2019. Wow. It's interesting when you watch these blogs evolve. I guess just apropos of nothing, but you look and see how he goes. See, you can see the ramp up. Oh, 29 posts in 2009, up to 77 in 2010, up to 278 in 2011, and then it starts to cruise downward again. Now we're down to 142, down to 75, down to 60, down to 36, down to 30. And I've felt that same thing in my various things. It's hard. I'm gonna tell you this. It's hard to keep pumping out stuff, right? It's it's difficult. It's easy to lose focus, just lose. I don't know, because I mean, someone like the Hill Cantons, they get a lot of. I mean, a lot of folks have given them their laurels for producing a lot of good stuff. So it's not that people don't like them anymore, whatever. But it's hard, and I feel that with the YouTube channel too. It's hard sometimes. Actually, these streams help because they push me to do stuff on somewhat of a daily schedule. Where I know before, if you go look back at my earlier couple of years ago now, kind of early history, like I would be pretty regular and then I would drop off a cliff and then I'd kind of come back and it's difficult. Though I have to say the other thing that's helped is I've come to grips with the fact that I'm not a professional. I don't have like pro equipment and I'm not trying to, I mean, see the output of my videos. Not like I have ever was really pro, but really trying to be kind of perfectionist with that. And I've been more, especially seeing some other people who have been fairly successful, and they're not. It's not technically amazing. They don't not filming everything in 4K and all this stuff. It's like they're in their car, they're in their living room, they're walking down the street and stuff, and they're just putting out. And that kind of helps be a little bit more relaxed. But it's tough. So kudos to the Hill Cantons for making a comeback. Hopefully it will hold. Hopefully they'll stick around. Ryan Smith says, I interpret that like you ramp up, do your best, get discouraged and slow down. It's hard to tell if you're shouting into the void or trying to hit an unrealistic mark. Yeah, I mean it's a lot of both. Like I can tell you for myself, um, we'll have to go to so I'll say for myself, and then I want to get to this article here. This seems interesting. That the analytics. So there's the whole analytics game, right? You look, and I think it's inevitable. I don't know. Maybe there's some folks out there who are able to just pump out content and never look to see how it's doing and not care. And they've got 5 subscribers or 500 subscribers or 5,000 subscribers or 50,000 subscribers. They just never look at it, right? I'm not that person. I end up checking it, and you can't ever tell what's going on in people's minds. You can't ever tell. You can't really ever tell what your numbers mean. You can either just kind of look at them and then let them go, or get all wrapped up in them. And there was a Facebook group. I think I'm still in the Facebook group about board games. It was a good group, but the creator of this Facebook group, who had something like 15,000 members or more, I don't know, had a lot of members of this group, just got in this phase where they were just agonizing over everybody coming and going from the group. Somebody left the group and somebody joined the group. Somebody left. Like they were just, and it was just this. It was just they were having. It felt like a mental health crisis over the numbers. And I guess maybe with Facebook you can see individually who comes and who goes, which I think makes it worse because you might say, "Hey, Bob joined your group. Bob left your group." Jim, who you might have been talking to the other day, just left the group and stuff. And then it became a little bit of a vicious cycle because they started posting and posting and posting about these like numbers that nobody else cared about. And it was taking over the group. Like, oh, this person left, or these people left, or this happening. I don't know what to, whatever. And it's like, buddy, you got like 20,000 group subscribers. You've lost 12. Like, and 50 other people have joined in here. I'm like, relax, like you're good. You're fine. But you can get wrapped up in it. Like for myself, between yesterday and today, my subscriber count was going like doing this little up and down. Oh, 2 subscribers, lost 2. Now in YouTube, I can't see whether they're the same people or not. So part of you in your brain thinks somebody joined, then they quit. But then it's like, did somebody join and then somebody else quit? And then you're trying to think about, well, which video was there something I said or did that made these people leave? You could just get too wrapped up. I try to ignore it as best I can. But that stuff's kind of happening. And I think for blog posts, I think people look at their analytics also, your page visits, all that kind of stuff. And even if you're not feel like you're shouting into the void, I think you just get to a point where it's like, am I reaching new people? Is it just like, am I getting anywhere? Am I losing mind share to something else? People just not care what I'm saying anymore. Like there's kind of all kinds of self doubts and things can creep in. And I think it's a struggle for most creators. It certainly is a struggle for me. And I can't imagine for folks, especially like if you're some of these blogs that had really great ideas and like boom, like and then you don't have that next great idea, and so you're just kind of blogging about stuff. But say I forget what, because I know there was something Hill Cannons did. Were they the folks that did the originally with the kind of brought the West Marches thing to the fore? I think that's Hill Cannons. If it's somebody else, I apologize. But you have this great this thing, and then you can't really follow up that thing. I mean, you shouldn't even need to. I mean, that play style bringing I'm not they didn't invent it, but they kind of brought it back into consciousness. Like that's enough of an achievement for anybody in the hobby, right? But that kind of dies down and you're like, I don't have anything I don't have another great idea potentially. Broughton says they'll never leave me. Oh well, appreciate it. And yeah, Joey says they check obsessively. I wish it didn't. Yes, I have gone through phases of where I'm like on it like multiple times hitting refresh. And then other times where I'm able to kind of let it go for a few days. And I always feel like when I let it go for a few days and I check it, there's usually a little bit of an increase. I'm like, oh, this was nice. But when I'm checking it constantly, it's like, oh, I lost 2 subscribers. What did I do? What did they do? Screw those guys, or oh, I miss you, whatever. And it's a whole roller coaster of emotions. Michael Frager says that most from their personal experience, most of the time they unsubscribe right after subscribing. Yeah, I don't think I have a pattern too much. I think usually is either and the thing is weird is I see that okay, let me see if I can resize this window to see what's going on here. Let me push this over a bit. No, I don't need there we go. I think the interesting thing is you never can tell because there are people with channels who are basically dead and seem to have a ton of subscribers and not lose too many, or maybe they do lose them. I don't see them because they just had so many. I always wonder, like, why do people hop off and unsubscribe? 'Cause I won't unsubscribe for a channel just because I disagree with them. But of course, if I find out, some channel that's just has some horrible, horrible takes or just stuff like, oh my gosh, these guys are secretly, you know, racist, some kind of phobes, like anti-Semitic Islamophobes, and I'm like, oh gosh, if I don't, this is not where I wanted to be, I might unsubscribe. But I'm fairly, I don't know, I pretty much stick with the channels that I like, and I think the only time I went through and really unsubscribed with a bunch is I was just going through, and I just found that my personal YouTube thing just had too many in there, and there was a bunch of channels that just weren't doing anything anymore. So I just got rid of those. Um, Everybody's different though, so no one great way to curate, and that's the other thing is you don't know. Like someone could like you could lose a subscriber because someone just quit YouTube. They just deleted their presence or something like that, or they died or whatever. Like you don't know, right? But that so it's kind of worse. I wish it almost sometimes it would say give you a little more information. Like this person just unsubscribed because they unsubscribed. Okay, great. This person unsubscribed because they deleted their account. Okay, that would kind of, I mean, from a number standpoint, that would make me feel better. Not like, okay, well, they just left the platform. So that's not on me potentially. But I'm also the person that kind of talks what they want to about what they want to talk about. So, at a certain point, if I've posted this in the past, stuff that I felt strongly about, and I've watched the subscribers count take a hit, but I'm like, if you weren't with me for this, then you probably weren't with me. So I don't need you. Right? Says that they work in their company's digital marketing team, and it's refreshing to see even a big company struggling to determine what follows or unsubscribes or subscribes even mean or how to sustain them. Yes, I mean that's where you get all these folks on YouTube with all these videos about how to get these numbers to do whatever. But I think the thing is that people only have glimpses. It's that whole blind man and the elephant. Nobody has the full picture. And many times you hear people say like, "Oh, you need to have a set schedule for content," and that does it. Like, I don't think that's true because I never like sat there and said, "Oh, if this person doesn't upload on Tuesday like they said they would, or what I'm expecting, then I'm gonna quit." I just usually, hey, there's a new video, there's a new video. I'll go check it out. So I don't know. Nobody know. I don't think people know as much as they say they do. Mark Smith says if YouTube tells me that they unsubscribed, it's because they died. Yeah, that's the thing is I don't even Brian Smith. That's the thing we don't get. I wouldn't be able to know. You could unsubscribe tomorrow, and other than the fact that you would just stop showing up for streams potentially, I would have no way of knowing. They don't give you that number. They just give you like an uptick or a down tick, basically. Oh, well, actually, it's even less than that. You just see your number go up and down. So, for example, let's say I check in 5 hours and three people unsubscribed and five people subscribed, I just would see +2. That's it. Like, so it's a really vague, kind of impenetrable black hole of analytics. And Elfbase says, I'm pretty sure YouTube doesn't know how YouTube works. Probably not. All right, let's do this before I go too long. So this is posted, and I'll post this in the chat from the rpgvibe.wordpress.com. And then, well, first off, Red Owl says, thanks for doing this. Keep up the great work you do. Well, thanks, Red Owl. I appreciate you. And Joey says, you can't even see most of the subscribers anymore. They're private by default unless someone makes their subs public. Yeah, that's the other thing. You really have very, very limited access to seeing who's doing what. So let me pull this onto the chat or onto the screen real quick. So this is at rpgvibe.wordpress.com /2022 /12 /09 your character should die. Your character should die. Here's a new article for everyone. Sorry, okay, writer's block. That's just I guess, an author's note. So for many 5th edition D&D players, or at least the ones I used to play with in school and eventually grew to avoid, D&D characters are something you get attached to and assume will never have to be replaced. What I see now that the dust has settled is that characters should be a thing that you can throw away for the cause of a bigger story. As an RPG culture, perhaps we've leaned too far into the notion that characters are not expendable, but they were in classic D&D. Where did that go? Maybe we should go back to killing characters. Oh, how morbid. But I know an opinion I can defend when I see one. Player imbalance. Look, I get it. Modern GM. I know you want to make sure your star actors don't lose their roles or get bored with the setting or story when their characters die. But it's not making you overpowered when you kill your players. Just a note, don't kill your players, kill their characters. In fact, the real fault in the balance between player and GM is when you let them live without consequences. When I ran my first big 5th edition campaign, it was called the Quad Squad, something like that. There was this one moment when I should have killed a player in round 1 with a breath weapon of a white dragon. That player got pretty annoyed and argued with me for a while about why I did that, urging me to go back and change it. We were friends at the time, so I was like, sure, why not? And we did a rewind in the game, which is generally frowned upon in a group setting. And that single individual managed to get me to rewind at least twice after that. When you're a GM, try to be a GM, not a friend. Maybe that'll keep stuff like this from happening. I don't blame that player. I mean, no one likes their PC to die, but have a fun time in Pathfinder, I suppose, dude. You're definitely not welcome at my table anymore now that I've seen the signs. Anyhow, I've heard many GMs complain about how overpowered their players are in 5th edition D&D. Is that because of the magic items, races, specialized subclasses, and variant rules within the game? Or could it be that you're just too chicken to actually fight a player with murderous intent at some point in the story? What can be done? You have to ensure that your players know death is something that can happen to them without there having to be a massive plot imbalance because their OC didn't survive. You have to make sure that you're controlling the world. You can and should be friendly outside of the game, especially toward your players. But in game, you are the rules and the world and the monsters and people within it. Nothing else. You have to be willing to know the intent of your monsters and other creatures. If they knock out a party member, would they want them alive or dead? How should the death or disappearance of a player character be handled? These sorts of questions can help you find a good balance. Overview. GMs, ultimately, I can't make this GM job easy for anyone. What I can do is tell you that you can feel justified in destroying your friend's furball druid without feeling justified in hurting their feelings. As a reminder, you can always make a new character players. But remember, in D&D, life can be very futile. Characters win and lose. Don't expect your characters to do one or the other all the time, and your GM is fighting to make a story. Maybe not one you can agree on, but maybe you're putting a bit of player bias in there. I have been Jonah Fouts or GM Tiefling, and this is RPG Vibe. Your character should die. All right. Well, from an OSR standpoint, I think this is a little bit of preaching to the choir. Yes, your characters can and should die. I think the big thing is that you have to reinforce enforce. You have to reinforce this concept a lot. You have to talk about it, and then you have to talk about it again, and you have to talk about it again and again and again and again. I think I mentioned as I've talked about my home game, which is an OSR game, but my players were not OSR veterans, and I would continually kind of hammer into them the fact that punches are not going to be pulled. If stuff happens, it happens, and kind of roll with it. And so far, they've been good with that. But yeah, I think that in 5th edition, you need to establish that. I think you want to. I mean, you definitely want it in your game. I mean, people always talk about wanting to, recreating these wonderful stories, but in all the stories, the heroes are put in jeopardy, and sometimes, depending on the story, some or more the heroes die. So that should be a possibility. You can get caught up in all these things you want to do, and I think it doesn't help that people are. And again, based on the internet, people's not necessarily real people's, but people are planning out their guys from level 1 to level 20. So that it almost seems like there's this assumption that, oh, my rogue blah 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 is going to be from this, and they're going to go all the way, and I've already got the progression all the way to level 20. But you might never make it to level 20. I mean, even if your campaign makes it to level 20, your character might not. But the fact that you've done all this kind of future thinking might put you in the standpoint, well, they must make it to level 20 because this is when I'm going to have my full concept will be unleashed. Well, you might not make it. And you got to kind of be open to that. But as GMs, we can make sure our players are aware of it, talk to them, make sure they know. So if they're not down with it, then they can exit stage right and not turn it into something that when it happens in the game, it becomes an issue. Derek Mann says they're not unsubscribing anytime soon. Appreciate that, Derek. Ryan Smith says, yes, this person is learning that characters can be expendable. Good stuff. Uh, and then Joey says, as Hankerin says, we're all friends here. Take a hearty chug of beer and you can come back to 1 HP. And then Broughton says, set the expectations of play, like how deadly you're going to make the game before everyone shows up to the table. Yes. And it should also be reflected in your character generation stuff. You're going to make me come up with 10 pages of backstory. That backstory should be somewhat, I feel like the longer your backstory, the more death armor you should have. If there's no backstory, then you're saying that this person might die at any time. So don't get too invested. You make me come up with multiple things of backstory with all this other stuff, then I think there is an expectation there. So you need to do that on your end. You're going to have somebody write up a ton of backstory. That's what you want. Then I feel like should give some kind of armor because you're asking them to put in a lot of work. Don't ask me to put a lot of work for somebody who's going to die in 5 minutes. Obviously, that armor can get used up over time, but you should be aware of that. So plan your character generation, the stuff you're asking for, appropriate to the expendability of your PCs, right? Which is why, oh, sorry, I don't even worry about backstory. Oh, you're a guy from a farm. Great, let's go. Because that guy from a farm might not make it. So don't worry about it. We'll figure it out later. If he makes it to be a hero, then we can come back and revisit. Well, why did you leave the farm and all this stuff? You can come up with it later. But at first level, or if you're in a funnel or something like that, it doesn't even matter. You're a dude from a place. You're a person from a place, and then the rest of the details don't matter because you don't matter yet. Your details aren't important. Braun says that they told the player, I like your character, but the world he inhabited was indifferent to him after he was ate by a giant toad. I like that. The world was indifferent to your struggles. That's good. Oh, I like that a lot. I don't have enough games going on where I feel like I'll have to use that phrase, but I like the idea that the world is indifferent. The world is indifferent to you. Yes, he was the hero of his own story, but that giant toad is also the hero of its own story. And at this time, the giant toad prevailed. Ryan Smith says their first experience with D&D was 5th edition, and they were disenchanted pretty quick with the no consequences vibe. They expected it to be dangerous and cool. They didn't know the different styles. Yeah, it's hard. And then depending on what you watch, I mean, Critical Role, I think for all whatever, I mean, they don't kill off people a lot, but I mean, things happen, people die. But I guess it's just the vibe of the game. I'm not sure. I don't think it's like a rules thing. I mean, granted, you have death saves and things that make it harder to die, but I don't think there's any guidance in the rules that say don't kill off your player characters. But I think maybe because the game is veered towards sort of performance arts, and that sometimes we lose track of the fact, or we kind of minimize the game parts. That when you're looking at from a sort of a performance art piece, the idea that your characters are kind of there for till the end of the play, so to speak, makes more sense than the game part. I'm not sure. There's probably some interesting nugget in there, but I'd have to dig it out. All right, folks. So just to reiterate, because in case you joined and you missed the front of this stream, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm going to be out. No streams. I will probably try to post some videos, maybe some shorts, things like that. But I've got work and family stuff that take me off the board for a few days. So look for me when the sun is in the east, and it's Thursday, I guess. If for some chance I get to break free and do something, I will, and I will post it. But I will try to post in the community tab and on the forums and elsewhere that I will be uh, out of pocket starting that. So have a great weekend. Yep, sorry, Bill Catcher, just for a few days. Got stuff going on. I'll be out of pocket. Other than that, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on. Yes, I will do TikToks. I enjoy doing the TikToks. I tend to post them on YouTube as shorts too. So usually what comes on TikTok, I will repost on YouTube. But there's a lot of fun stuff. Really great. I know people don't like TikTok because Chinese government reasons. I get that. I'm totally down with that. I mean, I don't know how much better Google or Meta or Elon Musk are. It's all kind of different phases of evil. But if you end up on TikTok, you can find me there, or you can just keep finding me on YouTube or wherever you're checking me out. Have a great weekend, folks who are in here right now. I shall return. Game on, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.